Hey there, welcome back to the Steel City Sports Podcast. Today we're going to be continuing our NFL tiers, and today we do have the playoff locks. So I know it's been a while since I've uploaded. I do apologize for that. I actually recorded both this tier and the number one tier, the Super Bowl contender tier, but I accidentally deleted both those videos. So that's why there hasn't been an upload in about 2 weeks now. So I do apologize for that now, but let's get into the playoff locks. And what I mean by that is I guarantee these teams will make the playoffs. If any of them miss the playoffs, either a significant injury happened to a key player or something just drastically awful happened, unforeseen. So let's get into it. And for our first team in the playoff locks, I have the Miami Dolphins. This team is just too loaded on offense for me to miss this playoffs. I know that they're in a tough division, but like I said, they're just an overpowered offense. And you look at today's league, if you've listened to my videos at all in the past, you know how strongly I feel about catering your team towards offense. All the roles are set towards offense making plays. And it even raises the question, and I could maybe even make a video about it, is does defense even matter in the NFL anymore? Of course it does, but with the Dolphins, you have the best wide receiver tandem in the NFL. I say that pretty confidently with Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, arguably the two fastest players in the NFL. You have Tua. When he's upright, he just wins games. There was a point last year where Miami was 6-0 when Tua was the starter. Then, of course, he started to have some concussion issues. And then you look at the defense. The defense could be really, really good this year. You bring in Vic Fangio, who obviously struggled as a head coach in Denver, but as a defensive coordinator, he can be a top 2 to 3 coordinator in the entire NFL. And you also brought in Jalen Ramsey, who I still rank as the second best corner in the NFL behind Sauce Gardner. I know he's going to miss some time. He's probably going to miss the first 6-ish weeks of the season, which definitely sucks, but you already have another number one corner in Xavier Howard. So when Ramsey gets back, that's just going to be a cherry on top of this incredible team. To go with that, you have a really young, creative, smart offensive mind at head coach Mike McDaniel. They just check way too many boxes. I like their pass rush. There's just too much to like with Miami. They have too much talent for me to miss playoffs. As long as Tua stays relatively healthy, I would pick them to win this division. I just don't trust Tua's health long-term over the season. Similar to the Dolphins, the Chargers just have way too much offensive talent for me to not put them as a playoff lock. I have my issues with the Chargers. I think Brandon Staley is one of the worst head coaches in the NFL. If you listen to me at all during last season, you know that I am not a big fan of Brandon Staley. I think he should have been fired years ago, and especially after them blowing that playoff lead. But in terms of the talent, you have Justin Herbert, who I think is pretty safely a top 5 quarterback in the NFL. He's been one of the most productive players through his first 3 seasons in the entire history of the NFL. Threw over 5,000 yards 2 out of the first 3 seasons of his career. So he's insane. And especially last year, his number one weapon, Keenan Allen, missed significant time. And he was he didn't miss a beat. He was still elite. And Mike Williams was double covered. It doesn't matter who he throws to. And they even went out and got him another weapon in the draft, Quentin Johnston, the receiver from TCU. I think is going to be an absolute monster. I honestly believe Quentin Johnston can be the best receiver in this class. And the fact that he's on the Chargers, he's going to be playing as the number 3, is mind-blowing, how dangerous this offense can be. The defense, they got names on this defense. You, of course, have Joey Bosa. He missed a lot of time last year, but he'll be back. You have Khalil Mack, who's definitely getting up there in age, but he's still an elite player at his position. You have Derwin James. If you watched my top 10 defensive players in the league, he made that list. J.C. Jackson missed some time last year, but last time he played a full season, he was regarded as one of the best cornerbacks in the NFL. So I have my problems with the coach, obviously. The division's a little tricky just because you do have the Chiefs, and the Chiefs have never lost to the Chargers in the Mahomes era. So there's some stuff there. Denver and Vegas could potentially be better. I don't know. But there's just too much talent on this team, particularly Justin Herbert, for me to not have him as a playoff lock. Our next team is the Jaguars, the team that beat the Chargers in the playoffs. And I am extremely high on the Jaguars this year. Their division is pretty weak. The Titans could, I think, improve with adding DeAndre Hopkins. That definitely adds an element to their offense they were missing last year. So look out for the Titans. They could potentially be better, but the other two teams are in complete rebuilds. The Colts have a rookie quarterback and a rookie head coach. Same exact deal with the Texans. Rookie head coach, rookie quarterback. So there's some pretty easy wins, and even outside of their divisional matchups, their schedule is pretty easy. And you look at, they're going into year 2 of Doug Peterson's system. I do believe Doug Peterson's a top 10 coach in the NFL. One of the few people in the world that can say they've beaten Bill Belichick in a Super Bowl. And Trevor Lawrence, I'm really high on Trevor Lawrence. I don't think that's a controversial thing to say. This guy was a #1 high school prospect. This guy was a #1 prospect in college and a #1 overall pick. I mean, he's done nothing but live up to the hype. Last year in particular was incredible, especially after the disaster of his rookie year. Having Urban Meyer really could have just wrecked the trajectory of not only Lawrence, but the franchise in total. But you bring in a legitimate great head coach in Doug Peterson, and just look how it transformed things. And they were in the game against the Chiefs in the divisional round of the playoffs last year as well. So you combine all that, the momentum. That's the key thing for the Jags. They have a lot of momentum going into this season. They're the favorite to win this division. I think pretty comfortably they're going to do that. And I even think they have a shot to be the 1 seed just because, like I said, the division's pretty easy. The schedule's pretty easy. And I do have my bet. I've already placed my bet on Trevor Lawrence to win MVP this year. That might sound like a controversial take, but I really just believe in Trevor Lawrence. And I made a video about that, so if you're interested about that, just go look for my MVP prediction video. But yeah, the Jags are here. Now, it feels really weird to put the Detroit Lions in a playoff lock tier. However, there's some circumstances that really lead me to believe that they can be a playoff lock, and ultimately I do have confidence in them winning this division. 2 things. Number 1, similar to Jacksonville, they have a lot of momentum going into this season. They're coming off a really impressive season. You know, I don't think really anyone had them winning 9 games last year, and they kind of got a moral victory there with beating the Packers in the last game of the season, kind of sticking it to Rodgers, denying him a playoff berth. And I really, really like their offseason. I think they had a phenomenal offseason, really addressing some of their biggest needs. You know, their offense was good last year. I mean, through the first 4 or 5 weeks, they had the highest scoring offense in the NFL, but they went 0-4 or 0-5 in that stretch. That just shows how poor their defense was last year. They could put up points, they just couldn't stop anybody. And I think that they really invested in their defense. They really tried to build that up, particularly in the secondary. You bring in CJ Chauncey, whatever his, I always butcher his name, CJ Gardner-Johnson, something like that, from Philly. You guys know who I'm talking about, who was a big piece in Philly's secondary last year going to the Super Bowl. You brought in Cam Sutton for my Steelers. It still hurts my heart that they stole Cam Sutton away. I don't blame him. Like, go get your money. He was offered way more money by Detroit. We couldn't have matched it. But he's really good. So you addressed your secondary there. Aiden Hutchinson was phenomenal last year. He's going into year 2, so he's going to be another year better. You got Jack Campbell, the linebacker, I think is going to be really good in the first round. And then also on the offensive side of the ball, the O-line, one of the best in the NFL. Jared Goff, we know he's not going to, make the highlight reel. He doesn't do that, but he's a very productive game manager style of quarterback, and he has playmakers around him. Amon-Ra St. Brown is starting to work himself, I think, up into the top 10 receiver conversation. Jameson Williams, when he gets off suspension, he's going to be great. Jahmyr Gibbs, I think, is going to be a stud from Bama. And then Dan Campbell's really won me over. So the Lions, and plus the division's extremely weak. And for our next team, we have the Dallas Cowboys. It feels like they've been a perennial 10-win team at least for the past however many years now. They do struggle, obviously, in the big game in the playoffs. They haven't really been able to get over the hump. But in terms of making the playoffs, I do think you can consider Dallas to be a lock. They just have too much talent. And some people are even predicting that Dallas could have the #1 defense in the NFL this year, which I think is definitely achievable. We have Micah Parsons. I ranked him as a top 5 defensive player in the league. I don't think that's hyperbolic, and I think Micah Parsons is a really good bet for Defensive Player of the Year this year. I think he's actually the favorite too, so look out for that. You added Stephon Gilmore, finally getting a number 2 corner alongside Trevon Diggs, which they've been looking for years now. So that's incredible. Their secondary is going to be insane this year. And then let's look at the offensive side of the ball. They finally got Zach Martin back. The O-line, it's not what it once was. But I'd still say it's a good offensive line. You still have 2 high-end players. They're definitely older in age, Tyron Smith and Zach Martin. But when they play, they are some of the best at their position. Looking at some of the skill position players, you have, of course, CeeDee Lamb going into his 3rd year. Expect a monster year from CeeDee Lamb. We all know he's really good, but I think this is the breakout year where we start to acknowledge CeeDee Lamb as a superstar receiver. You also added Brandon Cooks. You also added, or not added, but Michael Gallup is, I think, finally fully healthy for the first time in a while now. So I think you're going to have a really potent offense there. Tony Pollard's now the full-time back, which I 100% support. I've been pushing for Tony Pollard for 2 years now over Zeke. So I've been a big fan of his. And then Dak. I've had my issues with Dak in the past, but just in this offense, he's going to put up numbers. He might be turnover prone, but he just has too much talent around him, I think, to not lead Dallas to the playoffs. And I've seen some people put Dallas over Philadelphia to even win the division. I'm not going that far, but there's a lot of stuff to like about Dallas this year. And for our final team in this tier, I have the New Orleans Saints. Why are they in the playoff locks? Well, I think that they are the most stable, trustworthy team in this division, honestly, just because we talked about the other teams in this division in other videos. Tampa, there's some stuff I like, but they were a mess last year with Brady, and now you're having Baker, who struggled to win the starter job. He just got named starter today, actually, but he took a while for him to get named starter. So Tampa, I think they're out. Carolina, I like Carolina. I think that they actually have a chance to be a wild card spot, honestly. They have a shot. There's some stuff I like about Carolina. Namely, their defense is looking really good, I think. They got a lot of nice young talent on that defense. However, they're just too unproven for me. Same thing with Atlanta. There's a lot of pieces I like about Atlanta. They got a lot of weapons down there with Drake London, Kyle Pitts, Bijan Robinson, starting to build out a nice offensive line. However, Ritter's too unproven. So all that leads me to say New Orleans, I think they have the most stable roster. Their O-line's pretty good. They have weapons for Derek Carr to throw the ball to with Chris Olave, had a great rookie year. Michael Thomas, I don't know what to make of Michael Thomas at this point. I mean, it seems like the guy hasn't played in 5 years. 2019, he was making a case to be the best receiver in the NFL, and it feels like he hasn't played since then. So I don't know with Michael Thomas. We're just going to have to wait and see with him. Alvin Kamara, despite some of his off-the-field issues, I think he's still one of the most productive backs around the league. And then defensively, you obviously have a defensive head coach, Dennis Allen. They still have some good defensive personnel on this team. Lattimore, Cam Jordan, DeMario Davis. So all that just leads me to say, with the division being kind of weak, with them having still some really good players intact, and bringing in Derek Carr, who I think, despite having a disappointing season last year, Derek Carr is definitely the best quarterback in this division. And I probably am a little higher on Derek Carr than some others. I still give him a lot of credit for the 21 season, leading the Raiders to the playoff with all the mess going on with Gruden and the John Ross mess. I still kind of give him some leeway. So that's been it for the video. Let me know your thoughts down below. Stay tuned for the contender video.